Hello, Broncos. It's Miss Washington, and I have a fun story for you today. I hope you're having a great summer, and I just brought in one of my favorite books here. This is called A Bad Case of Stripes. Oh, my goodness. I wonder what's happened to her. Let's read to find out. A Bad Case of Stripes. This is by David Shannon. Camilla Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried about what other people thought of her, and today she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school, and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none seemed quite right. And she put on a fancy red dress and looked in the mirror, and then she screamed. You guys ever felt that way, that you had to impress somebody or dress up for them? Well, when she screamed, you wonder what happened. Her mother ran in the room and she screamed too. Oh my heavens, she cried. You're completely covered with stripes. Look at her. It was certainly true. Camilla was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream felt Camilla's deep. I feel fine, Camilla answered, but just look at me. You get back in bed this instant, her mother ordered. You're not going to school today. Camilla was relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what the other kids might say. And she had no idea what to wear with those crazy stripes. So her mother's checking to see if she's feeling okay. She said she feels fine. She just looks funny. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to examine Camilla. Most extraordinary, he exclaimed. I've never seen anything like it. Are you having any coughing, sneezing, runny nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, drowsiness, shortness of breath, or uncontrollable twitching? No, Camilla said. I feel fine. Well then, Dr. Bumble, turning to Mrs. Cream, I don't see any reason why she shouldn't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that should help clear up those stripes in a few days. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me. And off he went. Now look, the doctor's checking her out. Oh, man. But he doesn't see any reason why she couldn't go back to school. The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camilla. They called her Camilla Crayon and Night of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything were normal, but then when class started to say the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue, and she broke out into stars. Look at that. The other kids thought this was just great. One even yelled out, let's see some purple polka dots. And sure enough, Camilla turned all purple polka dotty. Someone else shouted, checkerboard, and a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camilla was changing faster than the channels change on TV. Look at that. That night, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called. I'm sorry, Mrs. Cream, he said. I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camilla home from school. She's just too much of a distraction. And I've been getting calls from the other parents. They're afraid that those stripes might be contagious. Camilla was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that just 2 days ago everybody liked her and now nobody wanted to be in the same room with her. Her father tried to make her feel better. Is there anything that I can get you, sweetheart? He asked. No, thank you, Camilla sighed. No, thank you, sighed Camilla. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans, but she had been laughed at enough for one day. Now, that's sad when kids get laughed at like that. You need to be part of making other people feel better, right? Well, yes, I see, Dr. Bumble mumbled when Mr. Cream phoned the next day. I think I better bring in the specialist. We'll be right over. In about an hour, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats, and he introduced them to the Creams. This is Dr. Grop, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young. And the specialist went to work on Camilla. They squeezed and jabbed and tapped and tested. It was very uncomfortable. Well, it's not the mumps, concluded Dr. Grop, or the measles, said Dr. Sponge. Definitely not the chicken pox, put in Dr. Cricket. Or a sunburn, said Dr. Young. Try these, said the specialist, and they each handed her a bottle of different colored pills. Take one of each before bed, said Dr. Grop. Then they filed out of the front door, followed by Dr. Bumble. Now look at all that. Poking and prodding on her. That doesn't look like fun, does it? That night, Camilla took her medicine. It was awful. And when she woke up the next morning, she didn't feel any different. She got dressed, her clothes didn't fit right. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant multicolored pill with a face on it. Look at that. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called, but this time, instead of the specialist, he brought the experts. Dr. Gord and Mr. Millen were the finest scientific minds in the land. Once again, Camilla was poked and prodded, looked at, and listened to. And the experts wrote down lots of numbers, and then they huddled together and whispered. Dr. Gord finally spoke. "It might be a virus," he announced with authority. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camilla. "Or possibly some form of bacteria," said Mr. Millen. "Out popped these squiggly little bacteria tails." "Or it could be a fungus," added Dr. Gord. Instantly, Camilla was covered with different colored fungus blotches. The experts looked at Camilla and then at each other. "We need to get over those numbers back again at the lab," Dr. Gord explained. "We'll call you when we know something." But the experts didn't have a clue, much less a cure. "We need to figure out what's going to fix her, right?" Oh. By now, the TV news had found out about Camilla. Reporters from every channel was outside her house, telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Soon, a huge crowd was camped out on the front lawn. Can you imagine? Look at all that. And Camilla just wants to get better. The Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies, from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, psychics, and an old medicine man, a guru, and even a veterinarian. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camilla's strange appearance, until it was hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and a long furry tail, but nothing had worked. So look, they're on TV talking about this changing girl, and bless her heart, there she is. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camilla. "Close your eyes," she said. "Breathe deeply and become one with your room." "Oh, I wish you hadn't said that," Camilla groaned. So slowly she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth, her nose was a dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran from the house. "Oh, what are we going to do?" cried Mrs. Cream. "It just keeps getting worse and worse." And they began to sob. But look, she really became one with her room. At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the door. He opened it, and there stood an old woman who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. "Excuse me," she said brightly, "but I think I can help." What do you think she's going to try that everybody else has not tried? She went into Camilla's room and looked around. "My goodness," she said with a shake of her head. "What we have here is a bad case of stripes. One of the worst I've ever seen." She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. "Here," she said, "these might do the trick." "Are those magic beans?" asked Mrs. Cream. Now you look, she's putting them into her mouth, which became her bed, right? Were they magic beans? "Oh my, no," replied the old woman. "There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans. I bet you like some, wouldn't you, Camilla?" Camilla wanted a big heaping plate full of lima beans, more than just about anything, but she was really afraid to admit it. "Yuck," she said. "No one likes lima beans, especially me." "Oh dear," the old woman said sadly. "I guess I was wrong about you." She put the beans back in her bag and started toward the door. Now Camilla really liked lima beans, didn't she? Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good, and being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she's been going through. She finally couldn't stand it. "Wait," she cried. "The truth is, I really love lima beans." "I thought so," the old woman said with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. Camilla said. Suddenly, the branches and feathers and squiggly tails began to disappear, and then the whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. "I'm cured," she said. "Yes," said the old woman. "I knew the real you was in there somewhere." She patted Camilla on the head, and then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care a bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never even had a touch of the stripes again. Now, you know what? I think this story's trying to tell us something. You should just be yourself. Do you like that? And if you like lima beans, well, you just go ahead and eat you some, okay? You guys have a good night. See you later.